There comes a certain age when the days stop rushing past you and start moving with you instead. Nobody tells you when this happens. It arrives quietly, like a change in the light outside your kitchen window. One autumn you notice it, and you cannot say exactly when it began. For a long time, life moves fast. There are children to raise, or careers to build, or homes to pay for. There are trains to catch, calls to return, plans to keep. You move through your days the way water moves through a narrow channel, fast, forceful, without much choice in the matter. And then one day the channel widens. Maybe the children have grown and gone. Maybe the work has slowed or ended. Maybe a person you love is no longer beside you at the table in the mornings. And in that widening, something strange happens. You have time now, but you no longer know quite what to do with it. This is a story about a man named Henrik, though it could be about anyone. It could be about you, or someone you know, or someone you will become. Henrik lived in a small town outside Umeå in northern Sweden, in a wooden house the color of rust, with a black roof that held the snow like a quiet promise every winter. He had worked for 34 years as an engineer. Bridges, mostly. He liked to say that his life's work was helping people cross things, rivers, valleys, the awkward gaps in the land that would otherwise keep them apart. There is something quietly moving about a man who spends his life building ways for others to reach each other. But Henrik himself was not always easy to reach. He was a careful man, measured. He drank his coffee black in a chipped blue cup that had been his father's. He did not raise his voice. He did not, for many years, cry. His wife, Ingrid, used to say that Henrik loved the way northern rivers love the sea, powerfully, but from a great and silent distance. She said this with affection. Mostly. When Henrik retired at 66, people at his small leaving party told him the usual things. Now you can finally relax. Now the good part begins. Now you can do everything you never had time for. He nodded and smiled the way you do at such gatherings. But when he came home that evening and hung his coat on the same hook he had hung it on for 3 decades, he felt something unfamiliar settle over him. Not relief. Something closer to fear. Because for the first time in over 40 years, there was no shape to his day. No meetings, no schedule, no bridge waiting half finished, calling him back to it in the morning. Just time. Wide, open, unstructured time. The kind he had daydreamed about for years and now did not know how to hold. There is a particular kind of loneliness that has nothing to do with being alone. It is the loneliness of having lost your shape, of not knowing anymore what your days are for. Many people discover this loneliness long before they retire. It can come after a divorce, after children leave home, after a long illness, after any of the quiet endings that life delivers without ceremony. Henrik discovered it at 66, sitting at his kitchen table on a Tuesday morning, watching the rain move sideways across the glass, with nowhere in particular that he needed to be. He remembers thinking, "I have wanted this my whole life. Why does it feel like grief?" Ingrid noticed it before he said anything. She had always been better than him at naming what was happening beneath the surface of things. It was one of the reasons he had loved her all those years ago, though he had never quite managed to say so in the way she deserved to hear it. "You're still moving, like you're late for something," she told him one morning, watching him pace the small kitchen with his coffee, checking his watch out of habit, though there was now nowhere to be late for. He laughed a little, not because it was funny, because it was true. "I don't know how to stop," he admitted. And Ingrid, who had spent 40 years learning the particular silences of her husband, did not offer advice. She simply said, "Maybe that's the next thing to learn." There is an old idea common in the northern countries that has no single word in English, though people try to translate it as coziness or comfort or contentment. But it is none of those things exactly. It is something closer to this. The decision to stop reaching for more and instead to notice what is already here. A lamp, a cup of tea, rain against glass, a person sitting quietly across the room, not speaking because nothing needs to be said. It is not laziness. It is not giving up. It is, perhaps, the opposite, a kind of quiet discipline. The discipline of staying with a moment instead of rushing past it toward the next one. For most of his life, Henrik had rushed past almost every moment he was ever given. Not because he didn't value them, but because no one had ever taught him how to stay. That winter, Henrik began taking walks. Not exercise walks, not the brisk, purposeful walking he had done for years. Timed and counted and finished as quickly as possible, so he could return to something more important. These were different. Slow walks, without destination, through the birch forest behind the house. At first, it felt unbearable. He noticed how loud his own thoughts were, how restless his mind became without a task to organize it. He found himself checking his phone for messages that weren't coming, glancing at his watch for a meeting that no longer existed. But he kept walking, and somewhere in the second or third week, something shifted. He began to notice the way frost formed on the tips of pine needles, the particular blue-gray color of a Nordic sky just before snowfall. The sound, barely a sound at all, of his own boots in fresh snow. He noticed, for what felt like the first time in decades, that he was alive inside his own life, rather than simply managing it. This is not a story about a man who found some grand solution to aging or loneliness or the ache of slowing down. There is no solution to these things. They are not problems to be fixed. They are simply part of what it means to live long enough to reach this particular season of life. But Henrik did discover something out there in the birch trees that he had not expected. He discovered that slowness was not the absence of life. It was, in fact, where a great deal of life had been quietly waiting for him all along. Ingrid began joining him on these walks some mornings. They did not talk much. This had always been true of them, even in their younger years, though for a long time Henrik had worried that their silences meant something was missing between them. Now, in the forest, in the cold, watching their breath rise in pale clouds ahead of them, he understood the silences differently. Some silences are empty, but others are full of a whole life shared, full of understanding too old and too deep to need constant words. He reached for her hand one morning, without really deciding to. She did not look surprised. She simply held it. 41 years of marriage, and this was perhaps one of the first times he had reached for her, simply because he wanted to, and not because an occasion called for it. There is a particular kind of grief that belongs to people who slow down late in life. It is the grief of counting, of realizing how many mornings were spent rushing past a view instead of looking at it. How many conversations were cut short for the sake of some appointment that, in hindsight, mattered so much less than the person waiting across the table. Henrik felt this grief in the birch forest some mornings, a quiet ache for all the slow moments he had not allowed himself, back when he thought slowness was something to be earned later, after the important things were finished. But he came to understand something else too. Regret, if you let it, can either paralyze you or it can teach you exactly what to do with the time you still have left. He chose, most days, to let it teach him. By spring, Henrik had built a small habit. Each morning, before anything else, he would sit at the kitchen table with his father's chipped blue cup and simply watch the light change over the yard. No phone, no plans, no agenda. Just 15 minutes of paying attention to a single unremarkable morning. He began to notice things he had missed for decades. The particular way morning light moved across the wooden floor. The sound of birds returning after the long winter. The specific, unhurried rhythm of Ingrid's footsteps upstairs. Familiar after so many years that he could recognize her simply by the weight and cadence of her walk. These were not extraordinary discoveries. They were ordinary ones. But ordinary things, looked at closely enough, for long enough, begin to reveal something almost sacred. There is a kind of wisdom that only slowness can teach you. It cannot be rushed toward. It cannot be downloaded or read in a book or explained in a single sentence, though people try. It has to be lived into slowly, the way frost slowly gathers on a window overnight. Not all at once, but thought by thought, morning by morning, until one day you look up and realize the whole pain has changed. Henrik did not become a different man that year. He simply became more fully the man he had always been underneath all the rushing. In the Nordic countries, there is a particular respect for winter, not despite its darkness, but because of it. The long nights are not treated as something to escape, but as something to be lived inside of. Candles are lit not to fight the darkness, but to make peace with it. People slow their pace, draw closer to each other, close their curtains against the cold, and turn inward. There is a lesson in this if you are willing to hear it. Not every season of life is meant to be bright or fast or full of accomplishment. Some seasons are meant simply to be endured gently with warm light and quiet company until the world turns again toward spring. Growing older is, in many ways, its own kind of winter. And winter, if you let it, can be surprisingly peaceful. Henrik is 71 now. He still walks in the birch forest most mornings, though more slowly than before. His knees complain in the cold. Ingrid walks beside him, more careful of her footing than she once was. They still do not talk very much out there. But it is, he has come to understand, a very full kind of silence. Last winter, sitting at the kitchen table with his blue cup, watching the frost thicken slowly across the window glass, he found himself thinking of all the years he had spent hurrying toward degrees, toward promotions, toward the next bridge, the next milestone, the next proof that his life was worth something. And he thought without bitterness, only with a kind of tired tenderness. I did not need to prove anything. I only needed to notice what was already here. Perhaps this is the quiet art the Nordic winters have always been trying to teach, not through words, but through the simple, patient rhythm of dark mornings and slow light. That a life well lived is not necessarily one that moved quickly, or achieved much, or filled every hour with purpose. Perhaps a life well lived is simply one that was noticed. Noticed slowly, noticed fully, noticed the way you notice someone you love, sitting quietly across the table from you, on an ordinary evening that asks for nothing except your attention. If you are somewhere in your life right now where the days feel wide and unfamiliar, where the rushing has stopped, and you are not quite sure what comes next, perhaps this is not a problem to be solved. Perhaps it is simply an invitation to slow your pace, to notice the light in your own kitchen, to reach without occasion for the hand of someone beside you, To sit with the cold, the quiet, the unhurried hours and discover the way Henrik did one winter in a small wooden house outside Umeå. That slowness is not something life takes from you. It is something life finally allows you to have. And perhaps if you let it, it will be enough. If this quiet moment resonated with you, you are always welcome here. This channel was created for slow reflections, honest emotions, and the thoughts many people carry silently through life. If you'd like more stories like this, you can gently subscribe and return whenever you need a peaceful place to think, feel, or simply listen. Thank you for spending this moment here tonight. Take care of yourself and rest well.